My name is Janet. I'm 59 years old and was a nurse before retirement. My daughter Amanda has been my whole world since her father died when she was just 5. I spent weeks preparing for this special Sunday dinner, choosing all her childhood favorites, wanting to impress her new in-laws. Nothing prepared me for the moment she looked me in the eyes and said, "You're not family, get out." Words that shattered my heart into pieces. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear what happened when I finally stood up for myself. I never imagined being a single mother. My husband Greg and I had planned our life carefully, but fate had other ideas when he died in that horrific car accident. Amanda was just starting kindergarten, her tiny hand in mine as we stood at his funeral. I still remember her confused little voice asking when Daddy was coming back. That was the moment I knew I had to be stronger than I'd ever been. The early years were a constant struggle. Working double shifts at Memorial Hospital left me exhausted, but those extra hours meant Amanda could have new school clothes and the violin lessons she begged for. My coworkers often asked why I never dated again, but the truth was simple. Between work and being a mom, there simply wasn't time. Janet, you need to think about yourself sometimes. My friend Susan would say whenever I turned down another blind date opportunity. I always gave the same response: Amanda is my priority. Dating can wait until she's grown. Our tiny 2-bedroom apartment wasn't much, but I made it home. While other nurses bought new cars or went on cruises, I squirreled away every extra penny for Amanda's college fund. We clipped coupons together on Sunday mornings, making a game of how much we could save at the grocery store. Despite our financial limitations, Amanda thrived. She inherited her father's natural intelligence and my determination. Her bedroom walls gradually filled with academic achievement certificates and music competition ribbons. By high school, she was first chair violin in the state youth orchestra and maintaining a 4.0 GPA. I will never forget the day the thick envelope arrived from Princeton. Amanda's hands trembled so much she could barely open it. When she screamed and jumped into my arms, I felt every sacrifice had been worth it. "Mom, I got a full scholarship. We did it!" she cried, her tears soaking my uniform. I had just finished a 12-hour shift, but suddenly felt more energized than I had in years. "No, sweetheart, you did it. This is all you," I told her, though secretly I allowed myself a moment of pride for the nights I'd stayed up helping with homework or working extra hours to pay for those enrichment programs. College brought changes, of course. Our daily calls gradually became weekly, then occasional. That's normal, I told myself. She was building her own life. Still, she came home for most holidays, filling our small apartment with stories of brilliant professors and new friends from wealthy families I could hardly imagine. It was during her senior year that she met Thomas. The first time she mentioned him, her voice changed, taking on a breathless quality I recognized immediately. By spring break, she was showing me pictures of a handsome young man with perfectly styled hair and a confident smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "He's studying business finance," she gushed. "His family owns like half of Boston." I nodded and smiled, ignoring the small knot of worry forming in my stomach. "He sounds wonderful, honey. I can't wait to meet him." When they graduated, Thomas proposed with a diamond so large it looked almost comical on Amanda's slender hand. I stood in the background at their engagement party wearing the one good dress I owned while Thomas's parents hosted at their waterfront mansion. His mother, Beatrice, a rail-thin woman with perfectly highlighted hair, barely acknowledged my presence. "And you must be Amanda's mother," she said, her eyes quickly scanning my department store dress before moving on to greet more important guests. Still, I was happy for Amanda. This was what mothers wanted, wasn't it? to see their children succeed and have opportunities they never had. If Amanda occasionally seemed embarrassed by my presence, I told myself it was just wedding stress. The wedding itself was an extravagant affair at a historic Boston hotel. Thomas's father, Richard, spared no expense, making it clear this was their show, not mine. I contributed what I could, draining most of my savings to buy a mother of the bride dress that wouldn't look out of place among the designer gowns. "You look beautiful, Mom," Amanda said when she saw me dressed up, though she quickly added, "Maybe take off that necklace, though. It's a little much." The necklace was a simple pearl pendant that Greg had given me on our 5th anniversary. I silently removed it, tucking it into my purse while blinking back tears. As Amanda and Thomas settled into married life in their new Beacon Hill brownstone, I hoped we would find our rhythm again. Instead, the distance between us grew. Our weekly phone calls dwindled to monthly, then sporadically. Each conversation became shorter, more superficial. "Sorry, Mom can't talk long. We're meeting Thomas's college friends for dinner." "Can I call you back? We're looking at summer homes on the Cape." "This week's crazy busy. Maybe next Sunday." I told myself this was normal too. Amanda was establishing her own family now. Of course, her husband would be her priority. But when she forgot my birthday for the first time in her adult life, the pain was sharp and unexpected. When I called her the next day, her apology seemed rehearsed. "I'm so sorry, Mom. We had this charity gala for Thomas's firm, and it completely slipped my mind. I'll send you something nice, I promise." The package that arrived 3 days later contained an expensive designer scarf that wasn't remotely my style, still in the gift box from the boutique. There wasn't even a handwritten note. The first real alarm bells rang when Amanda declined my offer to visit during the summer. "Actually, we're still settling in. The house is a mess with all the redecorating," she said, her voice unnaturally high. "I don't mind a little mess, honey. I could even help unpack," I offered. The pause that followed was telling. "It's just not a good time, Mom. Maybe in the fall." That fall turned to winter, then spring, with one excuse after another. When I finally did see their home, it was only because I happened to be in Boston for a former colleague's retirement party and practically invited myself over. Amanda's smile was tight as she opened the door. "Mom." "What a surprise. I thought you weren't coming until 4. "It is 4, sweetheart," I said, checking my watch. "Oh, right. Well, come in. Thomas is working late." The house was immaculate, clearly professionally decorated, with not a single personal photograph visible in the formal living room where she seated me. When I asked to see the rest of their home, Amanda hesitated. "We're having some work done upstairs. Another time." I nodded, swallowing my hurt. My own daughter was treating me like an unwelcome salesperson. Over the next year, the changes in Amanda became impossible to ignore. Her wardrobe transformed from casual elegance to designer everything. Her speech adopted the slightly bored cadence of old money. She began dropping names of people and places that meant nothing to me. "We're having dinner at the Blackmores next week. He's on the symphony board with Thomas's father. Meredith and I are taking a shopping trip to Paris in April. Her husband owns that tech company that just went public." Each time we spoke, I felt less like her mother and more like a distant acquaintance she was obligated to update occasionally. When Thomas did make appearances during our increasingly rare visits, his disdain was barely concealed. He would check his watch repeatedly, interject with corrections when Amanda mentioned mutual friends, and sometimes take calls in the middle of our conversations. "You'll have to excuse Thomas," Amanda would say after he left the room. "He's under a lot of pressure at work." The breaking point came during a dinner at their home when Thomas's parents were also present. Beatrice asked about Amanda's childhood, and I began sharing a sweet story about Amanda's first violin recital. Actually, Amanda interrupted, her cheeks flushing, I started playing when I was 8 at Lakeside Academy. I stared at her in confusion. Amanda had attended the local public school, and I had scraped together money for those violin lessons from a retired symphony player who charged less than the fancy music schools. No, honey, remember Mr. Abramowitz, who lived in our building? He gave you lessons in his apartment every Thursday. The silence that followed was excruciating. Thomas cleared his throat. I thought you went to private school, Amanda. Amanda laughed, a high, brittle sound I'd never heard before. Only for high school, darling. Mom's getting confused about the timeline. I wasn't confused at all. Amanda had attended public school until graduation. The confusion was her deliberate rewriting of our history. After dinner, when we had a moment alone in the kitchen, I asked gently, "Why did you say that about Lakeside Academy?" Amanda's eyes hardened. Mom, please don't contradict me in front of Thomas's family. It doesn't matter where I took violin lessons 20 years ago. But it did matter. It mattered because it was our history, our struggle, our life together, and Amanda was erasing it all to fit into Thomas's world. That night, driving back to my hotel, I cried for the first time in years, mourning not just Amanda's dishonesty, but the loss of the daughter I thought I knew. 2 months passed without a word from Amanda. I called twice, leaving cheerful voicemails that went unreturned. I considered driving to Boston to see her in person, but feared another cold reception. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in October, my phone rang with her number. Mom. Her voice sounded different, almost like the Amanda I remembered. Hi, sweetheart. It's so good to hear from you, I said, trying to contain my excitement. I know it's been a while, she said, sounding apologetic. Listen. We're having a special dinner this Sunday. Thomas's extended family will be there. His grandparents are coming from Europe, and well, I'd really like you to come too. My heart soared. This was it, the olive branch I'd been hoping for. I'd love to, Amanda. What time should I be there? 4 o'clock. It's formal, she added, almost as an afterthought. And Mom, it's really important to Thomas. His grandfather is very traditional about family. I understand, honey. I'll be there. After we hung up, I danced around my small kitchen. My Amanda was coming back to me. She wanted to include me in this important family gathering. Maybe she'd finally realized that status and wealth weren't everything. I spent the next 5 days planning. If this dinner was about family, I wanted to bring something meaningful. I decided to make my special apple pie, the recipe passed down from my grandmother that had always been Amanda's favorite childhood dessert. I also pulled out the family photo album and carefully removed a picture of Amanda at age 7 with her father just before his accident. I had it professionally framed as a gift. The morning of the dinner, I woke up at 5 to start baking. The pie had to be perfect with the precise balance of cinnamon and nutmeg that Amanda always loved. As it baked, filling my apartment with its warm, sweet scent, I felt hopeful for the first time in years. For my outfit, I had splurged on a new dress, navy blue, with a modest neckline, elegant but not trying too hard. I even went to the salon to have my hair styled, something I rarely indulged in. I carefully packed the pie in a special carrier, tucked the wrapped photo frame into my purse, and headed for the bus stop. The journey to their Beacon Hill home took nearly an hour, but I didn't mind. I spent the time rehearsing small talk and reminding myself to avoid any topics that might embarrass Amanda. As the bus neared their neighborhood, my stomach tightened with anticipation. The stately brick homes with their manicured gardens seemed to belong to a different world than mine. When I finally stood before Amanda and Thomas's 4-story brownstone, I took a deep breath and rang the bell. Thomas opened the door, his expression shifting from expectation to veiled disappointment when he saw me. "Janet," he said flatly, stepping back to let me in without offering to take my coat. "Amanda's in the kitchen." I made my way through their formal living room, nodding politely to a couple I assumed were Thomas's grandparents. The older gentleman barely glanced up from his newspaper. In the gleaming magazine-worthy kitchen, Amanda was arranging canapes on a silver platter. She looked up, her eyes widening at the pie container in my hands. "Mom, what is that?" she asked, her voice tight. "Your favorite apple pie," I said, smiling. "Just like Grandma used to make." Amanda's face flickered with something like panic. "You didn't need to bring food. The caterers have everything planned." "It's just dessert," I said, trying to maintain my smile. I thought it would be nice to share something from our family with Thomas's relatives. She took the container and set it on a counter far from the rest of the food. "Why don't you go meet everyone I need to finish up here?" In the living room, I was awkwardly introduced to Thomas's family. His mother Beatrice gave me an air kiss while his father Richard offered a limp handshake without making eye contact. The grandparents Werner and Helene spoke in clipped sentences about their flight from Switzerland. "And what do you do, Janet?" Helene asked, her accent making my name sound foreign. "I'm retired now, but I was a nurse for 35 years. She responded, exchanging a glance with Beatrice that spoke volumes. "And where is your husband?" "He passed away when Amanda was 5. I explained. "I raised her on my own." Another loaded glance between the women. "How challenging for you?" Beatrice murmured in a tone that suggested I'd admitted to something distasteful. Dinner was an elaborate affair served by uniformed staff. Course after course of food I could barely identify appeared and disappeared. Wine flowed freely, though I noticed my glass was rarely refilled while others were topped up regularly. Throughout the meal, conversation revolved around topics that excluded me. The European properties owned by Thomas's family, the private school Thomas's younger sister's children attended, the yacht they were considering upgrading. Whenever I tried to contribute, offering a comment or question, there would be a brief pause before someone spoke over me, continuing as if I hadn't said a word. I caught Amanda watching me anxiously, as though afraid I might embarrass her. When I mentioned how proud I was of her college achievements, she quickly redirected the conversation. "Actually, I was just telling Grandfather about the gallery showing Thomas and I attended last week," she said, not meeting my eyes. As dessert approached, I noticed my apple pie was nowhere to be seen. Instead, an elaborate French pastry was served. I glanced questioningly at Amanda, who avoided my gaze. "This looks wonderful," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "But what about the apple pie I brought?" A painful silence fell over the table. "Mom," Amanda said quietly, "the menu was set weeks ago. The pastry chef prepared this specially." "I understand," I said, forcing a smile. "Maybe we can have the pie another time." Richard cleared his throat. "Amanda tells us you live in Southfield," he said, naming my modest neighborhood with thinly veiled disdain. "Yes, for over 30 years now." "Interesting choice," Beatrice murmured. "I don't think we know anyone from that area." Thomas snickered, not bothering to hide his contempt. "It's not exactly on the social map, Mother." I felt my cheeks burning, but maintained my composure. "It's a good community, hardworking people." Werner, who had been silent for most of the meal, suddenly spoke. "In my day, people understood their proper place in society. There wasn't this constant, how do you say it, social climbing." The implication was clear. I was an outsider, an interloper in their world. "I don't think wanting the best for your child is social climbing," I said evenly. Every parent wants their children to have opportunities. Beatrice gave a cold smile. Yes, but some opportunities come naturally with proper background and breeding. Amanda stared at her plate, saying nothing to defend me. After dessert, as the group moved to the living room for coffee, I excused myself to use the restroom. On my way back, I passed the kitchen and noticed the trash can lid was ajar. There on top of the garbage was my apple pie, still in its container, completely untouched. Something broke inside me then. All the years of sacrifice, of putting Amanda first, of working my fingers to the bone to give her every opportunity, reduced to garbage. I picked up the container, holding it like the precious thing it was to me. When I returned to the living room, the conversation stopped abruptly. I stood there, pie container in hand, tears threatening to spill. "You threw away my pie," I said, my voice remarkably steady despite the storm inside me. Amanda's face drained of color. "Mom, not now," she hissed. "I spent all morning making this for you. It's your favorite, or at least it used to be." Thomas stepped forward, his expression cold. "Janet, you're making a scene. Perhaps it's time for you to leave." I turned to Amanda, silently pleading with her to defend me, to remember who we were to each other. Instead, she stood and crossed her arms. "This is exactly why I didn't want you to bring anything. You always have to make everything about you and your struggle." "My struggle," I repeated, incredulous. "My struggle was working double shifts for years so you could have violin lessons and SAT prep courses. My struggle was going without so you could have everything you needed." "Well, no one asked you to do all that," she snapped. "And honestly, I'm tired of hearing about it. We get it, you were a single mom. It's not a unique story." The room fell silent. Even Thomas's family seemed shocked by her cruelty. I set down the pie container with shaking hands and reached into my purse for the framed photo. "I brought this for you. It's the last picture of you with your father." Amanda glanced at it dismissively. "What am I supposed to do with that? It doesn't match our decor." Thomas put his arm around her protectively. "I think you should go, Janet. Amanda has built a new life here, with her real family." I looked at my daughter, this stranger in expensive clothes who had forgotten everything we'd been through together. "Is that how you feel, Amanda? That these people you've known for a few years are your real family, not the mother who raised you?" She lifted her chin, a gesture so like her father it broke my heart all over again. "You're making this so difficult as usual. If you can't be happy for me and fit in with our life, then maybe you shouldn't be part of it." "Fit in?" I echoed. "You mean pretend I'm something I'm not, be ashamed of where we come from." "Where I come from," she corrected. "This is where I belong now." Thomas's mother made a small noise of approval. "Amanda understands what it means to elevate oneself. Perhaps you should respect her choices." Something inside me hardened then. I had spent decades putting Amanda first, sacrificing my own needs and dreams for hers. But I would not sacrifice my dignity. "I've respected every choice Amanda has made," I said calmly. "I supported her education, her career, her marriage. But I won't pretend to be someone I'm not, and I won't let you make me ashamed of the life I've lived or the mother I've been." Amanda's face twisted with anger. "Just go, Mom. You're embarrassing yourself." I picked up my purse but left the pie and the photo. "I'll always be your mother, Amanda. That doesn't change because you've decided you're too good for me now." She exploded, then all pretense of sophistication gone. "You're not family anymore. Get out!" The words hit me like physical blows. I staggered slightly, steadying myself on the back of a chair. "Remember this date well," I said quietly, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Today you didn't just lose your mother, you destroyed your future." As I walked out the door, I heard Thomas say, "Good riddance," followed by Amanda's strained laughter. I don't remember much about the journey home. I must have taken the bus, though the memory is a blur of streetlights through tears. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt hollow, emptied of everything but pain. For 3 days, I barely left my bed. The phone rang several times, but I couldn't bring myself to answer it. What if it was Amanda calling to twist the knife further? What if it was a well-meaning friend asking how the dinner went? I couldn't bear either possibility. On the 4th day, I forced myself to shower, to eat something, to open the curtains and let light back in. I kept expecting to feel anger, but instead, there was only a profound sadness and, surprisingly, a sense of clarity. For 29 years, my identity had been wrapped up in being Amanda's mother. Now I needed to remember who Janet was. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea when the phone rang again. This time I answered. "Janet, it's Michael Levinson." The name took me back years. Michael had been Greg's attorney and friend. We'd lost touch after the will was settled. "Michael, this is a surprise. I've been trying to reach you for several days," he said. "I have some important information. Could we meet?" Curious despite my emotional exhaustion, I agreed to see him the following day at his office downtown. Michael had aged well, his dark hair now silver at the temples, but his kind eyes unchanged. He ushered me into a conference room and closed the door. "Janet, do you remember the life insurance policy Greg had through his firm?" I nodded. Greg had been an engineer at a large construction company. There had been a modest payout after his death, enough to cover funeral expenses and help us through the first difficult year. "There was a second policy," Michael said, sliding a folder across the table, "and some company stock that Greg had purchased. He arranged for it to be placed in a trust that couldn't be accessed until you turned 60. I stared at him in confusion. But why would he do that? Michael smiled gently. "Greg always said you'd put everyone else first, especially Amanda. He wanted to make sure you'd have something for yourself when the time came." I opened the folder with trembling hands. The numbers on the statement made no sense at first. Then I realized what I was seeing. "This can't be right," I whispered. "The company went public 15 years ago. The stock split 3 times since then. And the insurance was invested conservatively but has grown steadily. Yes, Janet, you're looking at just over $4 million. The room seemed to spin. All those years of pinching pennies, of working myself to exhaustion, while this fortune had been quietly growing, waiting for me. "I turned 60 in 3 months," I said, still struggling to comprehend. Michael nodded. "That's why I'm contacting you now. We need to start the paperwork, and you might want to think about financial planning." Nah. As I left Michael's office, clutching the folder to my chest, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days: hope. Not because of the money itself, though the security it offered was overwhelming, but because it felt like a message from Greg across the years. You matter, Janet. Your life matters. That night I made a decision. The money wouldn't change who I was, but it could help me become who I wanted to be. I'd spent my life caring for others. Now I could expand that circle beyond just Amanda. I contacted a financial advisor Michael recommended and set up a foundation to provide scholarships for single parents pursuing nursing degrees. The Janet and Gregory Walker Fund would help others who were struggling as I had, trying to better themselves while raising children alone. When the local paper ran a small story about the new scholarship, I began receiving letters and emails from single mothers in the community. Their stories of struggle and resilience resonated deeply with me. I started volunteering at a community center mentoring young single moms. One of these women, Eleanor, became a close friend. A widow like me, she understood the particular loneliness of raising children alone. We began taking walks together, then weekend trips to nearby towns, exploring art galleries and restaurants I'd never had time or money to visit before. "You know what I love about you, Janet?" Eleanor said one day as we strolled along the riverfront. "You're the same person you were before you found out about the money. Still kind, still putting others first, just taking better care of yourself now, too." It was true. The wealth hadn't changed my values, but it had given me freedom. Freedom from worry, from constant work, from the grinding anxiety about the future. I bought a small, comfortable condo closer to downtown, donated most of my old furniture to a women's shelter, and even at Eleanor's insistence purchased a new wardrobe that actually fit my current body instead of the one I'd had 20 years ago. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself, not just surviving. I didn't hear from Amanda during this time. I'd decided not to reach out to give us both space to heal. Sometimes at night, looking at old photos, I would cry for what we'd lost. But I was no longer defined by that loss. Then, exactly 10 days after that disastrous dinner, my phone rang with Amanda's number. "Mom." Her voice was small, broken in a way I'd never heard before. "Amanda," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "How are you?" She began sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "Everything's falling apart. Thomas's company. There was fraud. His father knew. The authorities." I pieced together the story through her tears. Thomas's father had been cooking the books at their family investment firm for years. When auditors started asking questions, he'd transferred much of the questionable activity to Thomas's newer subsidiary company. Now Thomas was facing potential criminal charges, and his parents had essentially thrown him to the wolves to save themselves. "His parents have cut us off completely," Amanda cried. "They've gone to their house in Switzerland. Thomas is a mess. We might lose the house, everything." "Where is Thomas now?" I asked. "Meeting with lawyers. Mom, I'm so sorry about what happened. The things I said to you. I was horrible." I closed my eyes, absorbing the apology. "Yes, you were. I need you, Mom. I don't know what to do. You can come over if you'd like. I've moved, though. I'll text you the address." 2 hours later, Amanda stood at my door. She looked terrible, her eyes red-rimmed, her designer clothes wrinkled as though she'd slept in them. "Mom," she whispered, and fell into my arms like she used to do as a little girl after a bad dream. I held her while she cried, stroking her hair. But when she was calmer, sitting at my new kitchen table with a cup of tea, I knew we needed to talk honestly. "I love you, Amanda. I always have, and I always will. But what happened at that dinner wasn't just a bad moment. It was the culmination of years of you pulling away, being embarrassed by me rewriting our history." She stared into her teacup. "I know. I got caught up in Thomas's world. His parents made me feel like I had to erase where I came from to belong with them." "And Thomas? Did he make you feel that way too?" She nodded miserably. "At first he said he loved that I was different from the girls he'd grown up with, that I was real. But after we married, he started making these little comments about my clothes, my accent, the stories I told. Eventually, it just seemed easier to become the person he and his family wanted me to be. Even if that meant cutting me out of your life." Tears spilled down her cheeks again. "I was wrong, Mom. So wrong. And now I've lost everything." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Not everything. You haven't lost me. But things need to change between us." Over the next few hours, we talked more honestly than we had in years. I listened as she described the pressure she'd felt to fit into Thomas's world, the subtle and not so subtle ways his family had made her feel inferior. But I also made it clear that while I understood, I didn't excuse her behavior. I won't be treated like that again, I told her firmly. Not by you, not by Thomas, not by anyone. I understand, she whispered. But what do I do now, Mom? Thomas might go to jail. We'll lose the house for sure. I don't even have a job. I'd given this some thought before she arrived. I can help you find work. With your education and skills, there are options. I know people at the hospital who might have leads. And money, she asked tentatively. Could you? I mean, just until we get back on our feet. No, I said gently but firmly. I can help you find resources, maybe co-sign for a modest apartment if needed. But you and Thomas need to rebuild on your own terms, not with handouts. She looked shocked for a moment, then nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair considering how I treated you. When Thomas called her cell phone an hour later, I heard the panic in his voice even from across the room. Amanda put him on speaker. The lawyers say I might avoid charges if I cooperate against Dad, he said, his voice cracking. But we're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, even your jewelry might be seized as assets. We'll figure it out, Amanda said, looking at me with new resolve. We still have each other. There was a pause. Is someone there with you? I'm with my mom. Another longer pause. Janet, after everything that happened. Yes, Thomas, my mom, the one person who's never let me down. I won't pretend things were magically fixed after that day. Healing takes time, and trust once broken isn't easily rebuilt. But over the next few months, as Amanda and Thomas moved into a small apartment in my building and began the humbling process of starting over, I saw changes in both of them. Thomas, stripped of his family's wealth and status, revealed a different side. He was intelligent and hardworking when not coasting on privilege. He found a job at a small financial advisory firm, starting at the bottom despite his MBA. The first time he thanked me sincerely for helping them find the apartment, I glimpsed the man Amanda might have fallen in love with initially. Amanda returned to her roots in many ways. She started teaching violin at a community music school, rediscovering her love for music that had been buried under social climbing. She began volunteering alongside me at the community center, working with children from struggling families. One evening, about 6 months after that fateful dinner, Amanda brought over a homemade apple pie. It's not as good as yours, she said shyly, but I wanted to try Grandma's recipe. As we sat eating slightly overcooked pie, Thomas looked at me with genuine remorse. I owe you an apology, Janet. The way I treated you, the things I said and allowed my family to say, there's no excuse. There isn't, I agreed. But there is forgiveness if you're truly committed to change. He nodded soberly. I am. This whole experience has shown me what really matters. Money comes and goes. Power is fleeting. But family, real family, the kind that stands by you when everything falls apart, that's irreplaceable. Amanda squeezed his hand, then reached for mine as well. We've learned that the hard way. Sometimes that's the only way lessons truly stick. I said, thinking of my own journey these past months. When you lose what matters most, you finally see its true value. Life continues to surprise me, even as I approach my 60th birthday. The foundation is thriving, helping dozens of single parents pursue their education. Eleanor and I have become travel companions, recently returning from a trip to Italy I never imagined I'd take. And my relationship with Amanda and Thomas, while still healing, grows stronger each week. Last Sunday, they hosted dinner at their modest apartment. As we gathered around their small table, Amanda raised her glass. "To my mother," she said, her eyes shining with tears, "who taught me that true wealth has nothing to do with bank accounts or social status. It's about integrity, resilience, and unconditional love. I'm sorry it took losing everything to make me see what was most valuable all along." The journey from that terrible Sunday dinner to this one has taught me the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes standing up for your own worth is the greatest act of love, both for yourself and for those who have forgotten your value. When Amanda told me I wasn't family, she broke my heart. But in that breaking, I found myself again. The woman I was before grief and struggle narrowed my world to just survival and sacrifice. The woman who had dreams beyond motherhood, who had value beyond what she could give to others. And ironically, by finding myself, I created space for Amanda to find her way back to me, not as a dependent child, but as a grown woman who could see and appreciate the mother I've always been. We all face moments that test our self-worth, times when those we love seem to forget who we truly are. In those moments, remember that your value doesn't diminish because someone fails to see it. Stand tall in your truth. The people who truly belong in your life will find their way back to that truth, or they'll make room for those who recognize your worth from the start. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself with someone you love? Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and self-discovery. Thank you for being here with me today, and remember, your worth is not determined by others' ability to see it.